probably the best one-way on Mirage in CS2.
So I love this strat breakdown, right? It's super precise, it's detailed, and super effective. But remember, when you're making your game, you're not making CS. I worked on CS. When we were making CS, we were making CS, right? And it was really important for the CSGO team to understand that the most important thing we could do is make everything about the matches, and the matches weren't just single games, but the entire match, right? So originally there's some ELO stuff that was about the individual game versus the match, and that just doesn't make sense in that game. You have to understand the game you're making. And I say this because, like, we have versus mode in the Anacrusis. Now, our versus mode is similar to Left 4 Dead in that it's very sloppy and noisy, and there's a lot of variation going on. But we try to keep it even between teams. There's still variation that happens. And we would get screamed at by the pros that, like, this game's never going to catch on as a professional esport game. Yeah, because it's not made for that. And would destroy it if we did that, right? It's all about that mixing up. It's all about that being evil, being a jerk, right? And then the Anacrusis, we even leaned into that more, where we make specific choices about that we want the players to die as survivors more often than make it. Where in Left 4 Dead, it was they should make it. And that ended, this added to really a toxic situation where you have to be perfect all the time versus our game where you can be very sloppy and you can make comebacks because you can really tip the score differently. But that said, it's still not a hardcore esport game. Now, I think if you look at PUBG, it's a really good example of a really big, really smart, really well-made game that said, oh yeah, we're going to become an esport. And they chased the esport thing with the map choices they made and a bunch of other choices they made with the game that ruined the game. It made it really unfun and really gave the opportunity for Fortnite to expand and explode. Well, Fortnite has its esporty side to it. It really isn't the feature of it. The feature of it is just the wacky craziness, right? Now, Fortnite's wacky crazy is this kind of like if McDonald's went, yeah, right? Like, it's not real wacky crazy, and that exhausts me. But they embraced what they were, and PUBG didn't embrace that what they were, and they paid for it, and it took them a long time to build it back. I mean, I think I saw the crashing for a while. That game was really crashy for me. But it's always a good thing to remember when you're making your game is what game are you making? What's your audience? What do you want the experience to be? So for the Anacrusis, our experience is about that experience. It's about spectacle. It's about frenzy. It's about, we have more aliens on the screen than we ever had zombies in Left 4 Dead. We have more craziness. We have crazy grenades, crazy weapons. Like, it's building up of that crazy thing so that you have these moments that are just like, oh my God, all that came together perfectly. And that's the kind of game we're building. So we don't care about the hardcore specific, I trained on this and it works exactly like this kind of shooter. And just to say, like, just remember the game you're making and really lean into that and embrace what you're making. Oh, and bring this up because I'll tell you what, I worked with a lot of senior people who still don't get it. They thought that Left 4 Dead or the Anacrusis was about difficulty. And they thought Left 4 Dead was about difficulty, and it's not. It's about experience. And so how do you bring that forward and how do you talk about that? And I would have to just beat this drum beat every day that our game is not about difficulty, it's about experience. The difficulty arises from that. We have Intenser mode. That is difficult. So if you want that kind of challenge, you can get it, but it isn't the way we get to it. We get to it by taking a spectacle and then building to it, right? It's a different approach. You've got to just be hardcore about your approach, not the game.